All right, Powerhouse panel is with us. Let's welcome everybody back in. Former Nevada State GOP chairwoman and Republican strategist,
Steve
Amy
knows what I'm talking-
Tarkanian.
I knew he would know.
Steve Clemens obviously knows. He's got that on right off camera right now. He loves that movie. Amy Tarkanian was with Christopher Arps is with us. He's on the Project 21 National Advisory Board member and editor-at-large of The Hill. Steve Clemens back with us after 6 weeks in Maui at the Grand Wailea. No, you were Big Island, weren't you, Steve?
Big Island.
I love it.
Volcanoes.
Did you say aloha for about a week when you got back? People do that.
I'm still saying aloha.
Yeah.
You know, it is really interesting when you come back. You know, there's a very big difference between aloha time and DC time, and I way prefer aloha time.
Yeah, it's called island time. Island time, definitely.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
You mentioned how the Athletics are getting some pretty good players on their team. Well, the Las Vegas Aviators, they're the ones who feed into that.
That's right. Are they a AAA feeder for the?
Yes.
They are. Okay. All right.
Las Vegas Aviators.
Fascinating stuff. All right. I want to just show you some protest video out of the state of Florida, ironically. Take a quick look. This is St. Pete, Florida, a day ago. The reason I'm showing you this, there's been protests like this throughout the country. This is about as peaceful as you can see, although they don't have a permit to be on the street there. But Ron DeSantis, a couple of days ago, signed the anti-riot bill in Florida. And basically, the bill, in very clear language, requires a minimum of 6 months in jail if you assault a police officer or a business during a protest, which that's when it becomes a riot, when things like that happen. That's when protests shift into riot. But does this surprise anybody that we're also seeing this sort of protesting in the state of Florida after, Ron DeSantis has had that state managed pretty well recently? Emerald, we'll start with you.
Well, my brother actually lives there in St. Pete, and he was telling me that they were expecting protests, but this was very different than what they saw last year. Last year, it was much more volatile, and I remember he actually, sat outside his place, he and some of his neighbors, just to ensure that no one looted because they're right on the street. But in talking to him, since he is a resident of Florida, he thinks that Ron DeSantis has handled this very well. Yeah,
and handled the virus as well. Steve, your thoughts on sort of, we've had protesting throughout the country for the last year. We didn't talk about it last summer. We talked about it, but other networks didn't talk about it. And that is a problem because half of America doesn't see what's happening out there.
Yeah, Rob, protests and violence are different things. The country is stressed out. A pandemic, lots of jobless, a racial divide, economic stress and troubles in the country. It's not surprising that there are moments that have really infuriated many Americans and made them feel as if, the social fabric is coming undone. And, after George Floyd's murder and after the murder of, other Black citizens in this country, I think we can understand where protests come. But that's different than violence. And I think what Governor DeSantis is trying to do is to make that separation. People have the right to protest. I have the right to protest. We all have right, but we don't have a right to loot. We don't have a right to hit and maim and damage property. And I think those are different, different tracks. And I'm glad to see people separating that, because we should be able to protest and people should be able to vent when they see things that are, unjust.
Right. I've never seen protesters, by the way, on rollerblades. That's got to be unique to St. Pete, Florida. You can tell your brother, by the way, Emerald, Vince Nowicki, who's running for mayor of St. Pete. He's the one that sent us that video. So a big thank you to Vince, and good luck to you. Yeah. All right. I want to play a soundbite, Amy, from Doug Ducey, governor of Arizona, on the situation happening in his state at the border right now. Take a listen.
We are deploying the National Guard on our own. The National Guard will also be available to support other law enforcement agencies, like our state troopers, who are seeing the very real consequences of the Biden administration's failed policies. The Guard will support by assisting with medical operations in detention centers, installing and maintaining border cameras, monitoring and collecting data from our cameras, and analyzing satellite imagery for current trends in smuggling corridors.
Amy, I'm curious why you think other states haven't done the same thing.
Well, I think it's not far behind. You're going to have other states, I'm sure, have to take it upon themselves to protect their citizens, since the Biden administration is not doing so. It's extremely scary what's going on, and it's very disappointing that we don't have the federal government assisting in this tragedy. The fact that you've got, I think it's now upwards of like 20 sheriffs in Arizona that are going to be standing firm behind the governor, along with the National Guard that's being deployed, in order to make sure that everyone is protected and safe. And that also goes for the illegal migrants that are crossing. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. And this is incredibly unfortunate, and it's being caused by this administration.
I've got Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn coming on the show in a little bit to talk about this. I think the Derek Chauvin stuff sort of bumped the border crisis off the front page of the news. But I've got a theory why maybe half of America doesn't think what's going on at the border is a big deal right now, Chris. And it's because if you are a regular CNN or MSNBC viewer, you are getting a totally different version of what is really going on down there. How big a problem is that?
It's a huge problem. You know, we've seen since the election that the mainstream media is not informing the public of what's really going on, and they're very restrictive on what they do show the public. You know, I've seen reports showing that, 26,000 unaccompanied minors probably will come to this country, in a year's time. That's close to almost 500,000 people. We just had a new mayor that was elected here in St. Louis. St. Louis is dwindling population drastically, and one of the plans that they have and they've proposed is to bring illegal immigrants and migrants to St. Louis and to be a sanctuary city to help bring up the population. So there are liberal cities all around this country that are in favor of this, and I think that's a big reason why the media is not really showing us what's going on.
Yeah, and if you're new to Newsmax, here, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, these numbers coming out a day ago, minors crossing the border, minors, not just everyone, this is just unaccompanied minors crossing the border, could reach 26,000 by September. That's their current estimate. That would be basically 1,000 a day. Obviously, that number shocking and would be an all-time high. We can get back into that at the top of the hour. Aloha to you, panel. We'll see you again in just a little bit.